Welcome everyone to the Wisconsin Veterans Museum's movie discussion night for October. This month we are circling back around to a film that we were going to do last year. I think it was last year anyway. But we had some technical difficulties with the Zoom platform and that discussion did not go off. So we are now trying it again. We seem to be all right. Everything looks in order. Like I said, welcome. My name is Eric Wright. I'm the Education Director for the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, for those of you who don't know me. And we are going to talk about the 1954 movie, The Raid, tonight. But before we do that, I would like to say thank you to the Wisconsin Veterans Museum Foundation for their continued support and all the free virtual programming that we put on at the museum. And of course, sponsorship for the foundation comes in the memory of Pat Finley. So thank you to the Finley family as well for their continued support of our free virtual programming. Just looking over my notes here to make sure there's nothing else I need to say before we get started. So yeah, we're looking at the 1954 movie, The Raid, with Van Heflin and Bancroft. Actually, we'll get into the actors in a moment. Let's look at the director first, Hugo Fragonese. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Originally an Argentinian sports broadcaster and reporter, made his way to Hollywood, started making major motion pictures, although I haven't heard of a single one that he made, but he does have quite a lengthy filmography if you look him up. Cinematography for this film was done by Lucien Ballard. He is mostly known for westerns during this period throughout the 50s and the 60s, to include True Grit with John Wayne, The Sons of Katie Elder, The Wild Bunch, Ride the High Country. So this kind of fits right into his wheelhouse. As a, I don't know, Chris, I don't know, would you consider this a western? Felt like it to me.
Kind of has that feel to it.
Yeah. Although it's not really, a Western per se, it's about the Civil War. And like I said, this movie does star Van Heflin. You might have seen him in The Greatest Story Ever Told, Three Musketeers, Shane, The 3:10 to Yuma. He's got a very long, Chris, it says that you are entering the waiting room right now.
Well, that's weird.
And there you are.
Huh. I don't know why I'm there twice.
Okay. Well, I expect you to contribute doubly then.
Okay.
This movie also stars Anne Bancroft. Chris, I think somebody has hijacked your password and whatnot, because now
I was having trouble getting in.
It's asking me to start an AI companion for you. I'm going to decline that.
Yeah.
And there it is again. Decline again. No.
Sally's joining.
Let's see if I can. Give me just one moment here. I'm going to remove your other person, Chris.
Okay.
And we'll see if that takes care of the problem. Yes, it does. Good. All right. So back to where we were. The actors in the movie, we talked about Van Heflin, also Anne Bancroft, a very young and beautiful Anne Bancroft in this film. Richard Boone, of course, the Halls of Montezuma, the Robe, the Shootist, and he was also the voice of Smaug in the animated movie of The Hobbit. If you're a Hobbit fan or Lord of the Rings fan, and you have the animated movie and you're a big geek like me, he's the voice of Smaug. I can't wait to go back and watch that again this weekend so I can put the actor's face to the animation itself. And then, of course, one of my favorite actors, Lee Marvin, The Big Red One, Dirty Dozen, Shout at the Devil. A couple of those we've already talked about here in our movie discussion nights. This film was filmed at RKO Pat Studios in California. And interesting note, the town that they used was the same town that they used in the Andy Griffith Show. It was Mayberry, except they burned it to the ground this time. So I don't think they'd ever burned to the ground on the Andy Griffith Show. It was produced by Panoramic Productions, distributed by 20th Century Fox, released on August 4th of 1954, with a budget of around $650,000. In 1954, that was a nice chunk of change, but it raked in nearly $3 million in box office receipts. So that was considered a success. And when you consider the movies that came out in 1954 that it had to contend with, it's even more of a number for 20th Century Fox. 1954 sees the release of White Christmas, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Caine Mutiny, Gone with the Wind, Dial M for Murder, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. So 1954 was a huge year for movies, and this, the Raid has to contend with all those. So bringing almost $3 million in box office receipts is, I would say, that's a win for them. We're gonna just go through real quick and see how everybody liked the movie. Jose, are you still with us? We'll start with you. No? Okay. Sally, we'll move over to you. How did you like the film?
Yeah, hello, excuse
Oh,
me.
sorry.
I have a really slow connection. That's why I cannot activate my camera. I'm
Oh, no
connecting
problem.
past Bolivia. It's not the first time I am being present in this kind of events. And I like this movie not just about for the thematics, but also for the director that is Hugo Fregonese.
Okay, thank you for correcting my pronunciation there. I knew I didn't have it right.
I really like because not just because of the West team, but also for knowing another kind of production of this director. Because he made also some movies in Argentina before going to America, and those were the ones I knew. This was a really nice opportunity to know more about uh, this director. I really like the movie, not just about because it has the thematic of the Confederate soldiers that have the opportunity to take some revenge, but also how the female character is presented. But maybe we'll talk about that later.
Mhm.
What else? Van Helsing, I think it's quite a character, so I really like the movie. That's all I have to say now.
Excellent, excellent. How about you, Sally? Did you enjoy the film?
Yes, I did. I thought it was interesting that the rebels won at the end. It was a whole different turnaround for me. I'm not sure I agree with it, but it was interesting.
Yeah, and I'll ask a couple of questions about that as we go through. But yeah, it was uh just a nice change of pace. You think you know how movies are going to end, and you're usually right. This one had a bit of a twist to it. So that was one of the things I enjoyed about it as well. And then Chris, how did you fare with the film?
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I was really disappointed when we had to cancel it the first time around. So I'm glad we brought it back.
Mhm.
I just thought it would I like the ensemble. I like the collection of actors that they pulled in for this, and I thought they all carried out their roles quite well. I thought the direction was quite well done. The final scene where they actually burned St. Albans, I was really kind of impressed with how they carried that out. I mean, it really just looks so realistic. All the smoke, the darkness, the flames, and so on. So I thought as a recreation of an actual event, it seemed pretty realistic to me.
Yeah, and like you were saying, this is before CGI.
Yeah.
So, this wasn't some graphics that they put up there. They really had to burn, Mayberry to the ground, so to speak. Um,
Mhm.
and you're right. I think they did a really good job of not only with the characters, the costumes, the scenery, the town itself. The plot was excellent. You have a bit of a love story in there, not too much, not overdone, but a bit just to keep things going. You have tension, you have excitement. Yeah, I thought all around it was a good movie. I'm glad this was one that we got a chance to watch.
Mhm.
So there's something else. Oh, and then like Chris was saying, yeah, this was based on a true event. This really did happen in St. Albans. Although, they keep referencing in the movie Sherman's March to the Sea and how this is kind of revenge for that.
Isn't it?
this Sherman's March to the Sea actually happened a month after the raid in St. Albans, so there's really no connection there. They play it up in the movie, which is fine. They have to do that occasionally. This is Hollywood. But yeah, like Chris said, this was a true event. This really did happen. Southern troops coming out of Canada attacking Vermont. And just as a side note, one of my favorite hockey players comes from St. Albans, Vermont. John LeClaire used to play for the Philadelphia Flyers for many years. So just tangentially, I just thought that was kind of cool too. So when we first meet a lot of the characters anyway, they are in a prison in Plattsville, New York. They're getting ready to escape. They have their tunnel dug and they're getting ready to go. And we see Lieutenant Keating, played by Lee Marvin, and he's talking to what I imagine is a priest or a preacher of some sort. And the preacher does not want to escape. Why doesn't he want to escape, first of all? And then Lee Marvin calls him a coward and a sympathizer for not wanting to escape. And I just want to know what that says. Although we've already seen the movie, we know how it turns out with Lee Marvin. But what does that say when we initially meet him about his character and his demeanor?
He doesn't have respect for disagreement.
Not at all. Yeah.
And that's emphasized repeatedly throughout the movie. But this is our first indication of it. And to have that disagreement with a priest of all people, absolutely no respect there at all. So it told you basically everything I think you need to know about his character, and his desire for revenge, clearly to get out and do something to get back at the Union.
Almost against his good senses sometimes.
Right.
So after they do escape, they are on the run. They don't have any horses as of yet. They're just on foot, and they're trying to make their way up to Canada, up to Montreal, where they can meet some other soldiers who had escaped from other prisons, and kind of band together and formulate this plan. But as they are fleeing, oh, Sally, don't do that. Good grief, it's been a long week. But as they're fleeing,
2 martinis.
What's that?
It's 2 martinis.
Oh, I've got to wait till after we get done here. This is considered work for me. So. But I have it waiting right up in the cupboard. As they are escaping, one of their soldiers gets shot, and they decide to leave him behind. Do you think that was the right decision? Is that a decision that you would have made had you been put into that situation, Sally?
Well, being a softie, I don't think I could leave someone, but it is war, and I think from a war perspective, that was the right thing to do.
Okay.
I don't think he had much choice, actually. The Union troops were pretty hot on their tail, and they really didn't have the facilities to transport the wounded soldier. I mean, they were all on foot, so there was no way they were going to be able to outrun him.
Yeah, he's just going to slow them down. He's obviously bleeding out. They say as much. They give him a gun, tell him to fend him off the best that he can while they make their escape. The soldier who got wounded, he's good with that decision. I think everybody else was too. I think there was one soldier who at first didn't want to leave him behind, but once they explained the rationale behind it, there's really no argument there.
Although the soldiers actually, all the rest of the soldiers, I think, actually hesitated in following Benton.
Yeah, no, that's right. It was more than one. Yeah.
They were also in a bigger mission, no? Because they were supposed to, after this raid, to be back in America to continue the attacks on other cities. Mm-hmm. So if they continue protecting this wounded soldier, they might expose the big mission they had.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. They can't really leave this soldier alive to the hands of the Union, because you're right, he might. I don't know if they tortured back then. I'm sure they did something along those lines, but they might find out what's going on and be able to thwart the whole plan altogether. So yeah, I think giving him a gun, leaving him behind, and having him fend off, they know he's going to get killed, he's going to die anyway. So certainly was the right decision, at least in my opinion. I probably would have done the same thing. Sally, you're right. Sometimes, as Patton says, war is hell, and you have to make hard decisions, and that's a decision like that is certainly one of those hard decisions. I go and then I put these questions together when we did this at least a year ago. And the next question I asked was, what was symbolic about the scene with the tracking dogs? I've watched this film a couple times since, or leading up to tonight, and I still, for the life of me, I can't understand what I meant by that question. I keep looking back, and I'm like, I don't see any symbology there at all.
Well, I thought it was kind of the flip side of the dog trackers that were used to track slaves in the South. And here you had the Union using tracking dogs to go after the Confederates.
Well, I'd like to think that I had that much insight into it, and that's exactly what I meant. But I can't say for sure, because I was really looking hard at that question. Every time I watched it, I'm like, what was it? Although one dog came up to the wounded soldier, he threw a stick, the dog chased the stick, but then after the soldier dies, the dog comes back. And he kind of stands over him like, look what I found, look what I did. But aside from that, I just really don't understand what I meant by that question. So I apologize if that kind of confused everybody else as well.
Actually, it didn't confuse me. I thought it was really symbolic of the whole of flipping this flipping the whole scenario, flipping the whole plot of that. In the Civil War, you had most of the time it seems to me, as you say later on, having it shot in the South, the Civil War movies shot in the South. This kind of flips it and puts it in the North, with the North being the roles kind of being flipped there. I think in Free State of Jones, I think there was a scene of tracking dogs used to chase the slaves, escaping slaves.
And I think we've seen that in some other films as well, at least maybe not the ones that we've covered, but certainly, if you are a military historian, film buff, and you do watch Civil War movies, you are bound to see something like that for sure. And like I said, Chris, I like to think that that's what I meant. But I just don't know. And then, of course, the last question for this section of the escape is, just I found it refreshing, and it sounds like everybody else did too, that we're watching a Civil War film that doesn't take place at Gettysburg. It doesn't take place, in Georgia or Mississippi. We're all the way up in Vermont. And I just thought that was a neat concept.
Me too.
And even though it is based on, factual events, just for someone to put this on print like they did, I just thought is a great idea, to be sure.
I thought it was kind of interesting that they had a prison for the Confederate soldiers as far north as Plattsburgh.
Well, apparently, yeah. And then, like the other soldiers that they met up with in Montreal, it seems like there was, more than one Confederate prison in these very far northern sections of the country. New York, Pennsylvania. I'm sure there had to be a couple in Pennsylvania somewhere.
You mentioned something about Springfield.
Yeah, they did. That's right.
And that sort of also when they were showing the scenes in St. Albans, particularly with the soldiers coming through, I thought it was kind of weird, almost, that a little town like St. Albans would be such a crossroads for so many Union troops to be going through.
Yeah, you're right. When the two platoons show up, right when they're about to initially, start their raid, and they have to call everything off. I was kind of wondering. I'm like, well, why is there two platoons just coming through St. Albans, Vermont? Why aren't they down, fighting somewhere in this?
And then the other one's coming in after the burning of St. Albans. Right.
Yeah, on the infantry battalion that was coming in. And just just as a fact anyway, we even had a prison camp right here in Madison, right over at Camp Randall. We had something like, what was it, 1,000 some odd Confederate prisoners that were housed there.
Oh.
And then if you go out to Forest Hill Cemetery, where we just finished our cemetery tours, there is a big section. It's called Confederate Rest. There's about 176 Confederate prisoners buried there. And it was kept for many years by a woman who was from Madison. She was not a Southern sympathizer, but she just, respected the fact that these soldiers had died in prison conditions, and, basically she wanted to bury them with proper respect, as any human probably should be. So we do have not only a history of having a Confederate prison right here in Madison, but we also have a large burial section for Confederate soldiers just right up the road. And it is a little bit funny. All their headstones are come to a point. And I don't know if it's true or not, but they say that the reason that it comes to a point like that is so the Northern troops cannot sit on their headstones and defile their graves. You're sitting on a point, it's not going to be very comfortable. So that's why they did that. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just the tale that goes around. But anyway, back to the movie. I digress.
Could have been a KKK hood, except that the KKK wasn't around then. So
yeah, no, definitely not.
That's funny.
So Van Heflin is now in civilian clothes. All of his troops are stationed here and there, waiting for the signal for the raid to start. But Van Heflin is actually in St. Albans. He's scouting out the territory. He's setting himself up as a Canadian businessman, and he's talking to bankers. And one banker in particular makes a statement about being neutral and how that's an enviable position. To be not part of the North, not part of the South, but just to be like a Canadian spectator in the whole thing. Excuse me. And I wanted to know your thoughts on, what is so enviable about being in that neutral position?
Well, I sort of got the sense that it was enviable because you could play both sides. They talked about, getting stuff from the South, selling to the South, getting stuff from the North, selling to the North, being able to deal with the British, and just basically, you get to be a Swiss broker, basically,
Yeah.
in the whole thing. So that's what I took it. It was commerce. That was the enviable part of being neutral, because it seems to me that when you're dealing with one side trying to defend an inhuman institution of slavery, and the other side trying to preserve a country, to me, there's not much neutrality there, or there shouldn't be.
Yeah, certainly not here within the States.
Right.
You were clearly on one side or the other. I don't think there was many fence straddlers during the Civil War. And then, yeah, you're right. Of course, commerce. With Van Heflin being a businessman, what they said, he buys cotton from the North or from the South, sells it to the North. With that money, they could buy guns and send it back to the South. And it's just kind of like this triangular trade that goes on between the North, the South, and European allies, for lack of a better term, I suppose. And then when you look at the town's attitudes toward the South, certainly there are expressed sentiments from the citizenry. Do you think that we can look at what Van Heflin or Major Benton, rather, however you'd like to refer to him, do you think we can look at his motivations as being justified?
I thought he had the motivations even before he got to St. Albans.
But were the motivations justified? Was he right in his actions or in his plans?
Well, I think he just saw St. Albans as a target of opportunity, in effect, because they had money, they had banks, they had the banks. It was a good location, and it was just one of several places that they were going to be doing this kind of thing at. So I don't know that his motivations were justified, but he certainly felt they were. As you noted, even though it hadn't happened yet, they kept referring to Sherman and burning Atlanta. So it kind of gets back to Keating with his revenge motivations. And I thought that with Benton's the Union troops having killed his wife, that he felt, perfectly justified in what he was doing.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah. Not just killing his wife. They burned his farm too. And it sounded like, that same thing happened to some of the other soldiers that were part of this raid. Jose, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with what with the other people say. But also I consider that he was on war state, so he was continuing the war. So as an officer, he had to find a target, and he found it in this city, and in the objective of getting more money for continuing the war.
Mhm.
Yeah, he couldn't just plan this escape and then, go to Canada, decide to, I'm done with the whole thing. That certainly would have been treasonous, at the most. But yeah, you're right. He's got to do something. So, you look for a target of opportunity just across the border from Canada. And then, of course, the money was a significant piece of the puzzle as well. Replenish the coffers of the South with all the money that they're stealing from these three banks. I thought it was kind of interesting at the end where they're making the bankers take the oath of the South. So they consider it not stealing, just reappropriating the funds for the good cause.
The
Mhm.
contribution.
Yeah, that's right. Contributions. um, and then, of course, the people in the town as well. Like I said, they expressed heavy sentiments about the South, particularly when they were advertising for the fundraiser where they were going to auction off the saber and the Confederate flag, and just some of the things that the people were saying as Van Heflin is having to stand there biting his tongue, as Lieutenant Keating is in the church. He doesn't bite his tongue very much, though. He decides to do something about it. Of course, he's very inebriated as well. Has been, seems like on a 2-day bender, according to the timeline that they lay out in the movie. And so, as soon as you see Lee Marvin walking into the church, something's going to happen. And I thought that it was a really interesting scene, the way they set it up. He's going to do something, but he waits and he waits and he waits, and it really just creates that tension. And the preacher is just quoting Bible verse after Bible verse about how rebellion is a terrible thing, and if the South is rebelling, that they're going against God, and clearly God is on our side because he doesn't like rebellion, and that just sets Keating off totally. And so Major Benton, in order to protect the plan of the raid, shoots Lieutenant Keating, shoots him dead right there in the church. In order to not have anything else become exposed. And this really creates an internal conflict for Major Benton, right?
Right.
I mean, what does the citizenry do after he shoots Keating?
They make him a hero.
They give him land.
Prime land right behind the bank.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Benton's conflict about that, I thought was entirely due to his feelings for the Anne Bancroft character.
Right.
Didn't have anything to do with anybody else. He didn't really care.
Well, and her son too.
And little Larry
He
Fisher.
really liked that little boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tommy Reddick. I kept looking for Lassie. It was.
I never watched Lassie when I was growing up. I didn't that show never really appealed to me, so I really didn't know who the kid was. But I did notice that he was in Lassie when I was doing my research for the film.
Yeah. When Richard Boone came, when I saw the Richard Boone on it, all I could think of was "Have Gun Will Travel."
Me too. Me too.
I guess I'm not. I don't want to say you two are dating yourselves, but those are just shows that I mean, I'm in the early 70s, but those shows weren't very. They were. I don't even think they were around. Maybe Lassie was. I don't think Have Gun Will Travel was still around though. I think
they're around. They're around now, so you can pick them up on cable or whatever,
They are.
And when I saw Anne Bancroft, all I could think was, how did she and Mel Brooks get together?
Right.
he was the lucky one in that.
No
Mel
kidding.
Brooks has a history of being lucky.
Yeah, I know.
So they start their raid, or no, sorry, before they start their raid, they have the dance, the auction, in the town hall. Anne Bancroft is there, and she has a little thing for Van Heflin, vice versa as well. And Captain Forrester, Richard Boone, you can tell he's a little jealous. Although he really doesn't go after Katie Bishop simply because she's a widow. But you can still tell that he's a little jealous because of the relationship that he sees between Benton and her. And he admits what he did during the Civil War and how he got wounded and lost his arm, and that he was a coward. He didn't want to fight. He was scared. He purposely hurt himself, although he didn't know it was going to turn out that way. He just wanted to be sent home. He didn't want to lose an arm, but he did. But do you think that he redeemed himself at the end of the film?
Well, I just want to go back to his relationship to Katie Bishop, because I think that the sense I got was that he was in turmoil about that relationship. It wasn't so much a question of jealousy, but he was in an internal turmoil because he knew of his cowardice. But in an early scene when Van Heflin comes in, we see him looking at the Medal of Honor certificate for Bishop's husband, who died during the war. And I think that my sense was that that the Boone character, Foster, didn't necessarily think he was worthy of her, given that she was the widow of a Medal of Honor winner.
Well, that's a good point. And I do remember them looking at something, but I don't know, maybe my my YouTube version of the film wasn't very clear. I didn't realize that was a Medal of Honor certificate.
Yeah, it only flashed across the screen. It was only there for like a second or two, but I paused it there to see what it was.
Okay.
And it said Medal of Honor, for her husband, and it signed Abraham Lincoln. At the top, it says in Congress assembled, or whatever it was. So, and big letters in the middle says Medal of Honor.
I wish they would have made that a little more prominent.
But anyway, that's what I thought was really working, eating at Captain Foster, that he did not think, in light of the man she had married and was the widow of, that he was worthy at that point. But he wanted to be, and he wanted to be.
And considering his cowardice, it matched up with the Medal of Honor win. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, and it actually puts things in a little more perspective as well.
But I just want to say, I do think he saw that the battle that he was waging when they're burning St. Albans. I think he was trying to redeem himself in that one. And then later on, when he tells the townspeople not to go and create this barrier, even though he was threatened with being killed himself.
Yeah, he stood right up to him. Exactly right. We kind of talked about this a little bit. The hypocritical sentiment. It's good for our troops under Sherman to go down and burn Atlanta, burn Savannah, march to the sea down in Georgia. But if anybody had done that, up north, they would, it was not justified. It would be a terrible thing, war crime, so on and so forth. Do you think that it's only good for one side and not for the other? What's good for the goose isn't good for the gander in this situation?
I don't know that I don't think it was hypocritical. I think the real question is, did Sherman really have to burn Atlanta? Did he really have to burn Savannah in order to make the point? I mean, he was marching across it seems to me that at that point the South was pretty damn close to being defeated, and that and that burning Atlanta and burning Savannah might have been seen as a kind of gratuitous at that point. I don't know how much resistance they were getting in those two locations. And you know, if you were a Confederate soldier up north, you might say, well, screw you, I'm gonna I'm gonna do the same thing. And you've got no cause for complaint.
Tit for tat, exactly right. Which brings up the bigger question. Yes, I know war is hell, and we do things in order to get our quick victories. With the quick victories, the men come off the battlefield. You can consider it saving lives, but ethically, is it okay to go and burn towns in the name of your honor, your war, your army, whatever it is?
Well, nowadays that would be considered a war crime.
Yeah.
Just willy-nilly go in and say, I'm winning. Here's one more poke in your eye.
And not just that, but also, I'm sure that, not every single civilian left out of there, all in one piece. If you're doing that much destruction, you're going to kill innocent civilians as well.
Right. I mean, it would be justified if you really had you were encountering military resistance. And I don't know, and in this sense, in St. Albans, they weren't encountering military resistance. So in that sense, it was purely gratuitous and I think unjustified. I don't know enough about what it was like in Atlanta and Savannah when Sherman was marching through, but if at that point he was not really encountering military resistance, I think that would have been gratuitous and unnecessary.
Yeah, my thoughts on Sherman burning Savannah is Savannah was a major port for cotton shipping and for slave trade. So if you're against those things, then in your mind, it's okay to burn those because that's getting rid of some of the resistance because the South was having trouble with getting supplies. And if
not only resistance, but you're also taking away the engines of war for the South. You're taking away, their ports where they can get their cotton shipped,
right,
where they can bring their slaves in. So
and
you are taking,
king.
and so you're looking at, basic aspects of war. You want to deprive the enemy of supplies, material, and money.
That's a better way to say it.
Right.
Yeah. Jose, did you have something to add to that?
Well, I'm not sure if it's good enough to know if it's really good to bring this theme on this talk, but I was thinking in actuality on how Israel is attacking also Lebanon and other cities, having the excuse to combat how do you say the Hezbollah troops, but they are also making victims of the civil population. So that was the comparison I was making in the actuality.
Yeah, and it's the whole reason I set this question up. It was kind of loaded and kind of a trick question. There's no good answer for this. We could be altruistic and put out the righteous answer and say, no, it's never okay to do this. If you're going to engage in combat, you're going to engage in combat with enemy troops only. And that's just the way it should be. But that's not how humans are. That's not the world we live in. You're going to, and I say you, I mean, any army that's out there, to include the American Army, is going to do things that probably aren't seen as the greatest. But like I said earlier, the sooner you can end a battle or end a war, the sooner you get the troops off of the field, you can consider it saving lives. You can consider it as a benefit to your side. But just ethically, it's horrible. But war is horrible. And it doesn't seem to be. It is the topic of our discussion every other month. War. And just on a side note to kind of piggyback on what Jose was saying, in case and nobody's seen it, I don't want to get political about this, but Israel did bomb Iran tonight. So yeah,
Uh-oh.
so we'll have plenty of news to look forward to throughout the weekend. But I digress again. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to get on to at the end of the movie. If you remember Van Heflin's final line, it's a voiceover that's kind of low toned. Does anybody recall that, what he said?
No.
When he was dancing with Katie Bishop at the auction dance, whatever, and he's telling her, he's like, so if a Southern soldier did this to the North, even though your troops did this to the South, could you forgive the man who did that?
Right.
And she didn't come up with an answer, and that was his voiceover at the end as they're riding away, and Katie Bishop is there with her son. The town is burning, but she didn't seem to be, I don't want to say sad. She still seemed kind of like, well, if he would come back to me right now, I would accept him and start a relationship with him. She didn't seem like he was the hated enemy that we all probably thought he would be considered by her. And so how significant do you think that line was at the end, especially mixed with Anne Bancroft's reaction at the end of the film? Almost a smile, kind of, because clearly she's missing.
She struck me as the kind of person that would have forgiven him.
I think so too.
And the thing was, he didn't strike. There was places in there where it was like he wasn't trying. He was trying to avoid certain kinds of actions by his troops that would have aggravated the situation. And so I think he thought of his mission as, despite his own motivations, his own the losses he had suffered, I think he still saw it in military terms as a mission to be accomplished as quickly as possible, with a minimum of human damage as possible. I mean, they could have massacred the village if they wanted to. I mean, particularly given their attitudes, they could have done a Lieutenant Keating on them, but I don't think he wanted that. And I think part of it was the unexpected nature, what I thought was his unexpected response to meeting Katie Bishop. I mean, early on, he said he thought that she would be older, and she has the line where she says, "Wars make younger widows."
Yeah,
and I think that probably had an impact on him, even though he doesn't necessarily show it at that point.
What do you think about the other troops in his unit, aside from Lieutenant Keating? We all know what he would have done, but particularly it was Peter Graves' character, Captain Dwyer. What did you think of him, and in relation to Major Benton? If you don't remember, he was the one who was selling the goods out of the cart. Peter Graves.
Right.
Right.
I didn't think of him as being particularly, vile or anything like that. He seemed more like a soldier who was there prepared to get the job done. But
yeah, it seemed to me that a lot of the troops in that unit were of the mind of Major Benton. We do have a mission to accomplish. We do want to, make a statement, let them know we're here, inflict some damage. But you're right. We don't want to massacre the whole town. We want to limit human damage as much as possible. It struck me like Captain Dwyer, Peter Graves' character, was of the same mind. And some of the other major characters from that unit as well. kind of had similar thoughts. They just wanted to make sure this raid gets complete, make sure they accomplish all the missions that they set forth, burn the town, rob the banks, and get away clean. And they did those. And so mission accomplished very successfully.
I mean, the thing that triggered the response to Lieutenant Keating by Major Benton, in part, was he killed a Union soldier when he didn't have to. I mean, it was just out of pure spite, pure revenge, and that harmed the mission. It put it at risk. So I thought it was mainly that, you know, these guys, it was a mission to get done, and I think they also probably understood that they'd gone ahead and massacred the town, that would have rebounded very badly, and caused even more damage to their cause.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Chris. You're right. They, you know, of course, you know, burning the town and stealing all the money from the banks is going to generate a response. But had they massacred everybody as well, that would have been a far more brutal response. And honestly, I mean, I don't know if even being in Canada would have saved them. You know, I can't imagine the Canadian border was too secure at this time. So I'm sure those Union troops could go right up in there, no problem, wipe them out, and then come back down, and there probably wouldn't be any political fallout as well.
Well, the Canadians might have been not so neutral at that point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Especially, you know, when you hear about the massacre of civilians and these terrible things, countries seem to loosen their borders a little bit, loosen their grip a little bit in order to get rid of people like that. So, yeah, no, that's a very good point. Do you think the film could have survived without the Major Benton, Katie Bishop subplot, even though it wasn't really romantic? I do call it romantic in my questions. But do you think the film could have survived or been as good without that?
I don't think so. I think her character brought the part of the movie about where there is forgiveness is possible. Like you said earlier, we all believe she would have forgiven him in the end. And I think it brought the human quality in, that we can forgive each other and we can live together, not so romantically, but
yeah, and maybe. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say I agree completely. She brought the humanity into the movie in a way that nobody else could. I mean, her son Larry.
I
added something to that as well. I mean,
yes, it definitely.
You could tell that Major Benton had a certain affection for him, and that wasn't dependent on his affection for the mother. I mean, he just liked the kid independently of that.
Right.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it brought out the human traits of all the other characters as well, not just putting that out on the screen as a major theme, but bringing it, you know, subtly from other characters also. I would absolutely agree with that. So we are kind of at the end of our discussion, or getting pretty close. You know, we've talked about the ensemble cast. And how we liked a lot of the actors that were in there. And it seems to me that a lot of these actors, this was kind of like their jumping off point. These are actors that I'm very familiar with in the 70s, but here we are in 54. Even Claude Akins is in this movie.
Yeah.
He's in an uncredited part. Douglas Spencer as the Reverend, he's in an uncredited part. And I think there was one other. I think, no, those are the only two that I have noted as uncredited parts. But these are actors that we all become familiar with. And then, of course, Peter Graves, Lee Marvin. So it seems like this is a jumping off point. We did pretty much establish already that we enjoyed the cast.
One of the things about seeing a movie like this, when you see the actors at the early stage of their career,
Mhm.
it becomes sometimes hard to separate what their later career was from seeing them in a scene like this. I mean, you
I
see,
agree.
I mean, the thing that struck me was that you have Peter Graves, Mission Impossible, and that's kind of what we're talking about in this movie is a Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan, not only of war movies, but my real passion lies with old 40s, 50s, and 60s science fiction and horror films.
Oh,
And every
really?
once in a while, I'll be watching the most obscure film that nobody's ever heard of, and all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, that's a famous actor. He's won Academy Awards, and here he is in this trash." Oh my
Yeah.
gosh! It's just so funny to see actors
Them.
in
Yes.
their, in their infancy, so to speak, of their
Yeah.
career.
Yeah, the movie
Mhm.
Them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I could see his face. I can't
I
think of
think
his name.
thought Peter Graves was in that one.
He was along with he was
Okay.
the state patrol guy. And then he went on to play
Roderick Crawford,
no.
State Patrol.
He went on to play a character in the Shawshank Redemption. The guy with the bird. I can't think of his name right now. But yeah, it's just you watch old movies like that and you see these actors in their some of their very first roles, and it's just it's funny, but it's interesting as well. And then
Yeah.
you watch them progress throughout their career. Some do a really good job, some don't.
Yeah, you think of it. I mean, the first time Brad Pitt made he just had this little role in Thelma and Louise.
Yes.
Who thought at that point where he would have gone with that.
With Leonardo DiCaprio in a Dawn commercial.
Oh, well, I think of Leonardo DiCaprio in the oh geez, I can't remember the name of the movie, but
What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Right, exactly. Yeah, that was he did a
So-
tremendous job in that. Anyway, digression.
What a
We-
fun
we-
one.
We seem to be pretty good at digression.
Yeah.
So we're going to go around the room and talk about our favorite character and why that is. Jose, we're going to start with you. If you could just let us know, who was your favorite character in this film? Who did you like the most and why?
I think I'm Backcroft because this character of the widow is a counterbalance not just for Van Helsing, but for other type of situations. I'm thinking of when this how do you say this word? Excuse me for my English, but these people that are these soldiers that are selling things, and the commercial people are opposed with this kind of how do you say of competition. Also with when they are auctioning the flag, and she sees that that is a quiet aspiration for the one that no for the man that for the officer that has lost his hand. She takes she also makes his bet to win this prize. So I think it was a really good counterbalance for all of these situations, and also like his son, the child, because what you said, the human part that he brings to the movie.
Excellent. Sally, how about you?
I'm a toss-up between Van Heflin and the little boy.
Okay.
They're kind of different, very different characters, but I thought they portrayed real people. Someone I could believe is a real character, a real person.
That's actually a very good point. And I would also say, Jose, the same of Anne Bancroft as well. A lot of times we watch movies and we know that's an actor portraying a character. But you're right. There was just that quality about them in this film that added a sense of realism. They, like you said, these were people we can connect with and relate to. And it didn't seem like an actor playing a role, actually.
Right.
Chris, how about you?
I'm with Jose on Anne Bancroft, mainly because of the humanity that she brought to it. I mean, she, despite her loss of her husband, she didn't seem to have lost. She didn't seem to be bitter in the way that so many other people were, and she had probably more right than anybody to be bitter. And she was also pivotal to the whole movie too, because she was the connecting rod between the Richard Boone character, the Van Heflin character, and when the other some of the other soldiers see her relationship to Major Benton, they wonder whether Benton's kind of going soft. So she has a pivotal role in the relationships among the various characters in the movie. So I thought she pulled it off very well.
I was wondering if Benton was going soft myself. First time we watched it, I was like, okay, is this guy really going to fold here? Because he sure looks like an ironing board right now.
Right, exactly.
But he doesn't, and I really like the way they ended the film. They stuck to their guns. Sorry to use such a silly euphemism. But they pulled the raid off. They did what they meant to do. Nobody went soft. Everything went as planned. It just like you said, Sally, just the ending was refreshing and surprising. You would normally be able to figure it out, tell you exactly what's going to happen at the end. Actually, that is what happened, but not in this film. So,
but I gotta say, there's one thing that bugged me about this film: the costumes. They had perfect ironed pleats in all the sleeves. And it's like, give me a break.
I was wondering where they got all these Confederate uniforms in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get Confederate uniforms up to Montreal? I guess you can, but it was just like, yeah, okay, all right. I'm going to take a couple of the smaller characters as my favorite actors. Definitely Reverend Lucas, Douglas Spencer. He always has bit parts in films that I really like. The Thing from Another Planet, the original with James Arness. He's in that. He's the reporter. And I've always liked Douglas Spencer. I thought he was a great smaller character. And then, of course, like I said at the beginning, I'm a huge Lee Marvin fan. Lee Marvin did not feature very much in this film, and when he did, it was an easy paycheck for him. There was really not a whole lot of acting going on. He had maybe a paragraph full of dialogue throughout the whole film. He just kind of had to play Lee Marvin part, be tough, be kind of a jerk, and shoot, and that was it. But still, I always like Lee Marvin. I like to see him in films. So I'll say Douglas Spencer and Lee Marvin. Those are my two favorite characters. Before we go, I just want to mention a couple of events coming up at the museum. We do have, speaking of movies, we do have a movie screening that is happening next Saturday, November 2nd. This film is called Honor in the Air. This is an independent film that was produced by Susan Reitz, who will be at the movie screening as well. And this is about Captain Scott Alwyn, who was a helicopter pilot with the 68th Assault Helicopter Company in Vietnam. He won something like 134 air medals during the war. He had a fantastic, I hate to say it this way, he had a fantastic career during the Vietnam War, came back to Wisconsin to start his civilian life, to start looking forward to the rest of his life, and was actually run over by a suicidal drunk driver. So this is a documentary that we'll be screening next Saturday, if that's of interest to anybody. There are a few tickets left. This is a free event, but we are limiting seating to 60 people. And I think there's 5 more tickets left. So if you are interested in that, please get your ticket quickly. Also on November 11th, we are having a book talk with Mark Faltersack, whose father served in the Coast Guard during World War II off the Greenland coast. And he basically wrote letters to his wife, Mark's mother, every day. And he wrote them on a 150-foot long piece of sonar paper. Brought this sonar paper back with him after the war. Mark has it now, and Mark based his book off of all his father's letters that he wrote on there to his family back home. So that will be a virtual event, book talk on November 11th. There's no limit to the amount of people that could show up for that. So if you are interested in that, please sign up for that. And you can all find all this on our events page as well. December 9th, we have another book talk with Mark Van Els, and he is talking about his new book detailing the 32nd Infantry Division in the Pacific. And then December 10th is trivia. We will not have another movie night until January, and that is going to be, what is that going? Oh, The Hunt for Red October. I'm almost certain we have not done that. I went back and looked through all my notes. I looked through all of our videos on YouTube. I am 99.9% sure that we have not discussed that movie yet. And as a tie-in to the museum, and I'm sure I'll mention this in January as well, if you have been to the museum, you know we have a full working submarine periscope in the museum. That comes off the USS Permit, which was one of the submarines used in the Hunt for Red October. So we do have a piece of movie history in our museum. That's a very popular attraction, especially amongst the fourth graders. So those are the events to look forward to coming up to round out the year and to begin 2025. And like I said, you can find all these events on our website, wispetsmuseum.com/events. We will be continuing movie night throughout 2025. Trivia night on December 10th will be our last trivia night. We are going to put that program to bed for a while, along with some other programs, but we will keep continuing to do movie night, even if I have to do it on my own without getting any sort of remuneration as far as time off or anything like that. I enjoy movie night. I enjoy coming up with all the notes and all the research on these movies. And of course, I just love watching movies. So
is there a trivia night in November?
No, there's not. No, November is, I don't think, no, because November is full with not only the movie screening and the book talk, but we also have a huge mess night event, all of our Veterans Day events as well. November is filling up really fast. And we're coming off of cemetery tours. We're hoping to kind of take November off a little bit. No rest for the wicked.
Well, Eric, I think you should facilitate a science fiction military movie.
Oh, that's easy to do. Oh, I could do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you need to do that. Just something very different.
Philadelphia Experiment, something,
Yeah, some science fiction, throw in a couple oddballs that you mentioned.
Oh, don't.
Oh, Edge of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh.
I think it would be fun.
There's so many. And I was sitting there talking with my director today, and he's like, I know you've been, doing movie night for 4 years now. You probably are running out of movies to watch. And I'm not really running out of movies. I'm just running out of good movies. But wow, yeah, I didn't even think about putting the science fiction and military connection. And we talk about it all the time too. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
Yes.
But yeah.
I mean, even those 1950 ones, the military always comes to shoot the alien.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. 20 million miles to Earth as this beast is roaming through Rome, tearing Rome apart. Here comes the American military to rescue.
Just something to throw in your idea box. I thought it would be fun.
Oh, that's an excellent suggestion, Sally. I will definitely start looking at some things like that.
Again,
you and I have talked about The Edge of Tomorrow several times. That's a fantastic film.
It's a terrific movie. I mean,
I
don't know
that
how many times I've watched it. What is it? Groundhog Day meets World War.
Yeah, alien invasion versus you're right. Groundhog Day meets alien invasion.
Which one is that? Edge of Tomorrow.
So that's starring Tom Cruise and
Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt, yeah, and it is about Tom Cruise relives every day of this war, even though he's not a ground soldier. He's a public relations officer, but he gets looped into the war itself, and he relives every single day, day after day, just like Groundhog Day, until he can finally figure out a way to defeat the alien and stop the invasion.
Yeah, who was it? Brendan Gleeson as the general.
Yeah,
really, great cast. And who the guy from Tennessee? What's his name?
The sergeant.
Sergeant, yeah. Where from Science Hill? Why do they call it Science Hill? Don't know. They never ask. Whatever. I just have a question for you, Eric. Are you familiar with the Criterion Channel?
Yes, I am familiar with it. I do not have it though.
Oh, I've got it. And you were talking about the 40s and 50s movies and stuff like that. They've got great stuff, and it's so high quality. It's really good. Right now I've got the noir series going that they're
Oh,
one
love
after
those.
another. Really good stuff. The Naked City, you
Oh,
know,
love
that
it.
all high quality restorations.
Yeah, I watch a lot of films on YouTube,
Yeah.
and I would say maybe like 1 in 4 is a Criterion movie. And you're right, the
Oh,
restoration that they do to it, it just looks
Oh, okay.
fantastic. It looks like they made it yesterday. They just did it in black and white.
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, just
Think about.
wanted to know whether you knew that as a source.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, I don't have the channel, but they do have quite a few films on YouTube that are presented by that organization. I think it's a nonprofit out of Europe, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
All right. Well, I hope everybody has a great weekend. If you are
Happy
in school,
Halloween.
trick or treating, and exactly. I was just gonna say happy Halloween to everybody.